Welcome to Center Ice, the Hockey Alberta podcast, home to all things hockey in our great province. Now, here's your host, Ted Emmett.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Center Ice podcast. I'm Ted Emmett, happy to be here for episode 10. Doesn't seem like a lot, but hitting double digits is no small feat. We have a fantastic couple of guests for this episode as well. Our province boasts many incredible players on the male and female side of the game, and coaches as well. But as we talk about quite often, there's more to the game than just playing it. Alberta is not only home to a large number of successful broadcasters, but also some of the very best in the game. Today, we're going to talk to two absolute legends, longtime Medicine Hat Tigers play-by-play announcer Bob Ridley, who has over 4,000 Western Hockey League games to his name, and the one and only Ron MacLean, host of Hockey Night in Canada and Hometown Hockey. So for myself, a huge honor there, and as you can imagine, a pair of fantastic interviews. Can't wait to get to those. And once again, a little update on the state of, everything around the province. As always, little disclaimer here as things could and very likely will change between the time I'm recording this and the time you're listening to it. So again, take this with a grain of salt. But at the moment, although restrictions did tighten up around the province in a lot of ways, especially restaurants, as we saw, pretty much status quo for team sports, meaning the same restrictions for team practices still remain in place. So as always, head to hockeyalberta.ca to brush up on those. And that's it for that part. So without any further ado, let's get to the fun stuff. And with us now is a man who really needs no introduction in the hockey world, but I'm going to give him one anyways. His name is synonymous with hockey in our country, and as the host of Hockey Night in Canada since 1986, he really transcends the game and has become a national icon. Although he's a transplanted Albertan, he got his start in media right here in Red Deer. He's an honored member of the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame, and a lesser-known fact, he's also an official. You've probably already guessed it. I'm speaking of the one and only Ron MacLean. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. It's not often that you get the chance to interview one of the ultimate interviewers in our game, and really in media.
I was saying, Ted, the problem with us, those of us who are in broadcasting, is as interviewees, we normally ramble. Even I heard from Matt Galloway, is a great broadcaster on Radio 1 for the CBC, and we had him on Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada this year. He had interviewed Barack Obama, and we were talking a little bit about things that are going on in our world. And he just said he pins on his microphone a Post-it note that says, "Stop talking." And I wish I'd have had that advice 40 years ago. But anyway, great to be here, and thank you so much for Hockey for Life.
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate it. And to start off, we know your connection to the game through the media, but can you kind of explain to us your involvement in hockey over the years, both in media and as an official?
Well, it started in Whitehorse, Yukon. So my father was military, 7 years in the Army and then into the Air Force for 30. And we were stationed in Whitehorse, Yukon when I was 4 years old, 1964. And there was a backyard rink across the street. A neighbor, Dwight Riondo, picked me up and said, "Ron, we're going over to Billy Clement's and we're going to skate." I didn't know how to skate, but that's how it started. And I fell in love with the game. And it's weird because in Yukon in the 1960s, there was no live television. The Annex satellite didn't go up in the sky until 1967, 68. So I actually watched the 67 Leafs Cup victory on videotape. But I grew to love it through Hockey Night in Canada, like so many of us. And then ultimately, when I was 10, Dad's getting out of the Air Force and chooses Alberta as the land of opportunity and finds his work in Red Deer with the K Division of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And by now, I was hook, line, and sinker into playing hockey. And I got on at a little community rink in Eastview and Grandview. Both had community rinks. And I started skating there and played my what would be probably U9 hockey. And yeah, I had great coaches, Jack Small and Jerry Baker. And yeah, just so many great memories of playing the game. And then ultimately I had a lucky break. A buddy of mine at high school was working at the local radio station, CKRD. He couldn't go in, he was sick. So he said, "Phone Ron, it's just operating, button pushing. Ron will figure it out." And that's how I got into the broadcasting end of it. And one thing led to another. Eventually they asked me to be a hockey host, and here I am.
And that's a good segue into my next question, because your origin story as a broadcaster is a little different. You know, a lot of people, they come out of high school, they know that's what they want to do, and yours was, as you mentioned, kind of an accident. So what was your plan originally going out of high school, or was it still eventually to kind of be in the media and the sports side?
Definitely not, to teach. I had a teacher in grade 7 at St. Thomas Aquinas in Red Deer, and he was laying out the curriculum for all our students in grade 7. And he said, Tuesdays at 11 a.m. we'll do spelling. And we all groaned. And he says, you don't like spelling? And we said, no, we hate spelling. And he said, well, I'll give you a word. And if any of you can spell the word, we won't do spelling. And the word was Albuquerque. And luckily, Gerald Dory, a buddy of mine, had been in New Mexico that summer, so he got it right. And I can't spell to this day, but I loved that teacher having that connection with the kids. You know, the trust that he built up that day gave me the bug to be a teacher. And so that was my goal, was to pursue education getting out of grade 12. But I got sort of that divine intervention happened while I was still in grade 10 to go down and work part-time at a radio station. And then I got that bug and I gutted my way through a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic attacks. And yeah, just loved the idea of radio as making someone's day. So I stuck with it.
And I know, as a resident of Red Deer and in Alberta, you know, we're all pretty proud, and it's really cool that you got your start here. And of course, as I mentioned too, you're recently inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. So how important are those Alberta roots to you? Obviously, you spend a lot of time in Ontario now, but you know, getting your start in Alberta, how important is that to you to always keep that in mind, and that you get honored for those roots as well?
For sure. I always say getting a bronze from the Calgary Stampede Committee one year was one of the most special rewards, because I just felt like, you know, it's hard to be a prophet in your hometown. So that's nice. And same with the recognition from the hall in Alberta. You know, we moved east because the 2-hour layover, you'd have to fly Calgary down to Toronto, 2-hour layover, and then on into New York or Boston. And it was really difficult to be on Hockey Night in Canada and do that. So it made sense logistically to be in the center of the country. That's the only reason we moved in the first place. And it's lovely. I have no complaints about Oakville, where I live now. But I miss the West desperately. You know, in a dream world, I would be able to afford a spot in Banff or Canmore and spend half our time out in the Rockies. It's just Red Deer's a great community, as I don't have to tell you. It's a perfect place to raise a family. And I was so lucky to have Bernie Haley as a referee to look up to. There's a guy that I always think is very underrated in terms of his effect on hockey in central Alberta, because he was a ref and did Lake Placid. And great coaches and great, you know, Dennis Dostapowicz was the guy in charge of refereeing when I was there. And I learned to really, Stu Hittman was a ref I really looked up to. And, you know, all those influences have touched my life in eternity.
And now when we're talking about honoring your roots, it's something you've had the incredible opportunity to do now for a number of years as the host of Hometown Hockey. How much has that meant to you to be able to, you know, travel around the country and really dig deep into the game and find out what the game means to people in all these different communities?
Well, it's so true. You know, Ted, we went out to Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland. And for me, I had to leave Toronto on a Sunday morning, fly to Halifax, then fly to St. John's, Newfoundland, then fly to Gander, and then drive 90 minutes to get to Grand Falls, Windsor. And I thought, what the hell am I going to talk about in Grand Falls, Windsor? But that year they won the Allen Cup. That's the home of the first Newfoundlander to play in the NHL, Alec Faulkner's from Bishop Falls, which is right there. They had an incredible hockey scene. They broadcast every minor hockey game in Grand Falls, Windsor is on local cable TV. So, I mean, that passion for the game, no one would have known about without Rogers Hometown Hockey. George Scott, their play-by-play guy, was incredible. He was every bit Bob Cole, Jim Houston, Chris Cuthbert. Yeah. So it's a great show. It reminds me of being a young boy in Red Deer and living vicariously through wide world of sports. And anytime there was a Pan Am Games or an Olympic Games, that was, or even the Summit Series or the Canada Cups, these were a glimpse into how the rest of the world was. And you really were grateful for that. And that's why I think the Hometown Hockey Show is such a great way to reflect Canadians to one another.
And when you talk about too, you know, all the flights, the layovers, the traveling, I think on some level, everyone understands how hectic the life of a broadcaster can be, especially on your level, being on Hockey Night in Canada. But I think most still underestimate just how exhausting it can be and how much time it can take. So you obviously not only need a very understanding family for that as well, but also the passion for the game. So really, what fuels your passion for hockey and keeps you going as a broadcaster?
Well, you're first of all, you're really right about my wife Carrie has had to endure. It's not just the travel, but the prep time, right? I think anybody who's obsessed with doing a good job knows that the work you put in is kind of a 24/7 obligation. There's that sword of Damocles hanging over your shoulder all the time, thinking, hell, I'm not ready. I'm not ready enough. So you're forever researching and prepping, and you enjoy it, but it's at the expense of maybe some time spent with family. Anyway, Carrie's been great. She's a hockey fan. She's a player. And in my case, I still play beer league hockey twice a week, and that's sacrosanct. I have to carve out that little Tuesday and Wednesday to play and go for beer afterwards. And I get a lot of my greatest ideas from those guys, just sitting around chewing the fat about the game. So I think that's, it is a gift to learn to skate. I experience it when I do that Battle of the Blades TV show. I'm just so grateful that I stumbled into knowing how to skate. And here I am in my 60s, and, you get on the ice with Kurt Browning or Katerina Gordieva, and you just can't believe it. It's the best feeling. It's the only one where you can go backwards. I love LeBron James, but he can't go backwards like we can. So I always sort of rationalize that's the big surprise that people who don't skate don't know.
And as I alluded to earlier, it may come as a surprise to many to know that you're an official as well. And I think the Alberta officials community would be pretty angry with me if we didn't talk about that a little bit. So really, to touch on that a bit, starting at the beginning, what made you get into that side of the game?
Well, it was back in the 70s, we didn't have face masks, not even visors. And I was just starting my radio career at CKRD, and I was doing a little bit of on-air work, and I was deathly afraid. I already had lost one incisor, a CFL Calgary Stampeder, Stu Laird, when he played minor hockey in Red Deer, fell on top of me and knocked out one of my teeth. And I just was worried I'd have all my teeth, caved in by a stick or the ice, and it would really affect my radio career, my burgeoning profession. So a friend said, why don't you move into refereeing? I was cut by the Red Deer Rustlers, and I knew, it was pretty much, I was playing one notch below the midget Optimist Chiefs, which is AAA. So I kind of felt like my career was going nowhere that way. And he said, try reffing. It's a great way to be in the game. And I loved it. I truly, you get yelled at for sure. But your feeling of contribution is immense. Working with the players and the coaches, Ken Hitchcock was in this year's class. I mean, he was a dear friend of Dave Manning. Dave was the coach of the midget AAAs when I was a referee, and I just loved working with him. And Harold Jeske was coach of the Bantam AAAs, and you just felt like between the two coaches and the three officials back then, we had one ref and two linesmen, you could really facilitate something special. And I never lost that joy. I just got a little bit old. My eyes started to go, and life got busy, and the lockout happened in 04, 05. But for 23 years, it was a joy of my life.
And so with being an official, being on the other side of the game, how has that helped you as a broadcaster and as an analyst as well, now seeing kind of the game from both sides?
Well, probably more, Ted, in the ethical sense. You understand that your intentions are good, but no matter how good your intentions, half the crowd and half the players are going to hate your decision, and the other half is going to love your decision. And that really teaches you to accept, to build a bit of a thick skin, so that when you're doing what you believe is right, you understand it won't always be met with approval. So that was the great gift of refereeing, is to kind of learn to have a stiff upper lip when in fact you're taking a lot of heat for a decision you've rendered. And you don't go in there, convinced of yourself 100% of the time. I worked a lot with the coaches to explain, I would even take back a penalty call. I have actually put my arm in the air, called the 2 minutes, and then said, no, that's wrong. I jumped the gun. I anticipated. It wasn't a, trip. My bad. We're not calling that penalty. And, I have to then go and explain it to the coach why I'm changing my mind. But I felt like that was an important dialogue, and that I have applied to my broadcasting, is, to always have those hard conversations and open conversations. And yeah, it was no greater feeling. Honestly, standing at center ice during O Canada with players lined up at the blue line ahead of a playoff game in Junior A or even Junior C. I have some of my best memories are Junior C. What a feeling, and what an obligation. And because it is, that's all kind of freedom comes with responsibility. And I think refereeing is a fantastic way to teach, especially young men and women, how to manage those kinds of situations.
And a couple of pieces of wisdom in there already, but do you have any advice now for any of the up and coming or just ongoing officials here in Alberta?
Well, there's a lot of things. Try to be fresh. Don't overdo it. I found if I officiated too many big games in a row, like 3 back-to-back days, the third period of the third day, I started to lose my focus. So focus is everything. Whatever you can do to maintain your concentration when you're on the ice, and then after maintaining your focus, maintain your grace. It's really easy to, want to chirp back or to take it personally. But you are in a role that has to be above that. There is a virtue to refereeing that it must not accept necessarily, something. You can give a 10-minute misconduct if required, but you need to really work on maintaining. And this is honestly, as we come through the pandemic, that's a great skill to just cope with, things like pandemics. Is that acceptance that people, fly off the handle because they're in the pressure situation that they are, and they're on tenterhooks. So understand that and be a little bit forgiving if you can, without, compromising the safety or well-being of the game. So grace and focus, work on those.
That's great advice. And I know all the officials around the province will be really appreciative to hear that from you as well. So thank you for that. And we're going to jump back a bit now to your roots a little more and growing up around the game. And this might be a hard one to pin down. Do you have any specific kind of fond memories of growing up playing the game that still stick with you today?
Yeah, lots of things. I remember in Red Deer, Christmas Eve was very special. My mom and dad, we were Roman Catholics, so mom and dad would take me to midnight mass, but they would go lie down around 8:00 in the evening on Christmas Eve. And I would walk over to Joseph Welsh Elementary and sit in the basket of the net. When I was young enough, it was because I thought I might see Santa's sleigh up in the sky. But later, it was just to go to the rink. I loved the rink. I spent every waking minute on either Morris Row or Joseph Welsh Elementary rink. Couldn't wait for the warmer weather of February, that first Chinook, and all the pucks would appear on the far side of the boards, and I'd be able to go fetch all those pucks. I just remember my attachment to the rink, having a stick over my shoulder, the skates over the stick, and getting over there to play shinny with, and I remember a guy named Mac Tweeten. I played with his brother Kirk, but Mac was the fastest. And one day I caught him. He was on a breakaway and I caught him. And he said, "Yes, Ron, you caught me, but I had the puck. When you can catch me and you have the puck, then you will be the fastest." So little things like that all just swirl when I think about Joseph Welsh Elementary and the great gift of, giving kids an opportunity, which is what rinks do.
And this is going to be an even tougher one to pin down. Do you have a favorite memory from all the time you've spent around the game as a broadcaster, maybe just a specific aspect of your career or a specific story?
No, I do, again. And it's funny, origins are everything. I talked a lot about, because of the class, the Hall of Fame class, about my time with John Davidson, my rookie year. But for 2 years, I only did the Calgary Flames regular season games. I didn't work a playoff game until 1986. And that year, I got to do Toronto Maple Leafs at St. Louis Blues, first game of the playoffs in St. Louis at the old arena, which they used to call the Checker Dome. And they used to play Budweiser music in there. And the Saints come marching in, and it smelled like ammonia, the rink. And I remember I did my little opening to Hockey Night in Canada, and I was scared skinny. It was actually 87. So it was the 86-87 season, but it's the spring of 87. I do my opening and throw it up to Bob Cole and Harry Neal. And then I turn and look through the plexiglass to see the referee drop the puck to begin the game. And honestly, within 2 seconds, 2 defensemen were smashed up against the glass right in front of me. And I thought, oh my God, the intensity. And they're going to have to do this for 9 weeks. And I really got an appreciation of what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. And yeah, that is by far the signature moment for me. There's a lot of great Olympics, the Canada win in 2002, both the men's and women's. But I just remember gaining a sense of what it takes to win a Stanley Cup that night in St. Louis. And I always say that's the highlight of the career.
And I know, as a broadcaster, and part of what makes you so great at your job and why you've been with Hockey Night in Canada for so long is you are a storyteller. And I think we could have a 4-hour show here at least with you telling stories. But I know, when we talk about the Hall of Fame class, and you just shared a bit of one there, do you have any stories, too, about our upcoming class, like John Davidson or anyone there that you can share?
Sure. Well, let's start with JD. As I was saying to him for the presentation video, I attribute my start and any success I had early to John. Like the movie To Sir With Love, How Do You Thank Someone Who's Taken You From Crayons to Perfume was a song by Lulu in '67 that went to #1. And I feel that way about John mentoring me. He taught me as I got on the bus after my very first broadcast in Washington, and I was pleased as punch with myself. I wasn't great by any stretch, but at least I got through it. And I was kind of all smiles, and he said, Ron, tone it down just a bit. When the Flames lose, we have to let on that we're as unhappy as they are. So if we're going to get on their team bus to go to the airport and get on their charter flight, we have to be a little more subdued after a loss. And he just kept teaching me every step of the way. Ken Hitchcock, my vivid memory of Ken is the '99 Cup run. Moments before a critical game in the final, he was talking about Sylvan Lake and Jarvis Bay. And it was almost like Cassie Campbell Pascal's team. They had a happy place. In 2002, they had come up with Emerald Lake. That was their happy place. And if anything went wrong, somebody was to say Emerald Lake. And it did go wrong. There was 8 straight penalties called against the Canadians in the gold medal game. And Dana Antel was the one who finally said Emerald Lake. And everybody got thinking, oh, yeah, that's right. We were supposed to think about Emerald Lake if times got tough. And so I wonder if Ken Hitchcock's was Jarvis Bay and Sylvan Lake. But anyway, he got the cup, and that's a great memory. And Jamie McCowan's father, here's another Hall of Famer who was great to me in my time in Calgary. You know, something that most people may not know, but when I broke in, Ted, the Calgary Flames were coached by Badger Bob Johnson, and Jamie was one of 12 U.S. college kids on the Calgary Flames. So you're a young interviewer. I'm 24 years old. I'm hoping to have a good interview. And 12 of the guys have gone to college. So I'm not stereotyping, but chances are if they've gone to U.S. colleges, they're talkers. And they were. Eddie Beers, University of Denver. Perry Barazan, University of North Dakota. Steve Bozak, Northern Michigan. Gino Cavallini, Bowling Green. Mike Eves, Wisconsin. Joel Otto, Bemidji State. Colin Patterson, Clarkson University. Kerry Wilson, Dartmouth College. Charlie Bourgeois, University of Moncton. Jamie McCowan, Ohio State. Neil Sheehy, Harvard. Imagine, Bruce Eakins was only there for a couple of games, but he was Wisconsin, and Badger Bob. So I'm sure I was lousy. It's just these guys were all great talkers, and it made for great interviews. And Jamie's father, he ran the Newmarket Junior A franchise down here, and when I would go into referee there, he always had a big smile and made me feel at home. I would do his Christmas showcase tournament, first game on Boxing Day. I'd always do that. That's a great family. And the Clarks, Olds Grizzlies were a huge part of my, I can remember doing a game with Frank Ryan in Olds against the Red Deer Rustlers, of course. And went into triple overtime, and Frank had to pee in a popcorn cup. We couldn't get away from the microphones. And so we're up. I am sorry to tell you, Bob, but we kind of stained the beautiful new facility back in the day with a pee in a popcorn cup. And Randy Gregg, what can I say? All my Olympic experiences connects me as much to his children as to Randy. But I do remember some really nice conversations with Randy at Barry T's after they won the cup in '88. And he was just kind of talking to me about Coach's Corner and the role that you have in advocating for fair play and things like that. Amazing. So yeah, it's a great class, and I could weave a story probably about all of them.
Yeah, I could listen to a story about all of them too. And it's funny when you mention the Olds Grizzlies, and in my very short stint as calling games in the AJHL or as a color commentator, I know the popcorn cup incident. I think a lot of people have been there, and the other one too. I don't know if you were in Olds, if they had an away broadcasting booth. I know when I was there only 7 years ago or so, the away guys, we just stood in the stands in the corner. And I fell down and brought all our setup with us, and we were off the air for about a period because I slipped off the steps. So it's, that's another one I think I could probably talk to you about for hours is the away rinks.
Ted, we were the only broadcast. I don't think the Grizzlies had a broadcast. This is, so I'm talking 1983, maybe 1982. And we were in the glass-cased press box. There was no, you couldn't, I think we had the window shut just because of the noise, which makes no sense. You think you'd want the crowd noise. But in those years, I'm sure it's the same, but the seats were all on the one side. Is that how it is to this day?
Yeah.
So yeah, we would, I remember, this is a funny story of my first Red Deer Rustler broadcast as a color man. Now imagine, I'm like 21, 22 years old. I could bloody well play on the team, and I'm doing the color. And I was doing it up in Fort Saskatchewan. And we start the broadcast. We had some technical problems. It was a real simple setup: alligator clips to hardwire a telephone receiver to make it into a radio mixer. And I had lots of technical problems. And finally, we get sorted out about 5 minutes to air, and we go on the radio and we start the game. And Fort Saskatchewan is coming at us, the Traders, and I can't see their numbers, none of their numbers, and neither can Frank Ryan. So he's having a horrible time trying to do play-by-play, and I'm having a horrible time. So there was a good player named Sid Cranston, and he was every highlight I talked about Sid Cranston because I couldn't see who the hell was on Fort Saskatchewan except in the second period. But that's a profound memory of, and even the road trips, just stopping for burgers, whether it was Peter's in Calgary or the Saratoga in Edmonton. Half of your concerns as a broadcaster were, where do we eat after the game?
Oh, yeah. See, I love stuff like that because it shows too, even after all these years, you really never do forget where you come from. So it's always great to hear those stories. And yeah, the early days ones are always pretty funny to hear. So kind of jumping around, I probably could have organized these questions a bit better to flow. But another one I'm just thinking now is, how have you seen the game change in all your years calling hockey and being an analyst? Obviously, it's changed a lot. Maybe what's the one biggest change from the 80s to now?
Well, I think it was the shift in how the people watching hockey wanted it called. Because I was a referee, the chant was always "let them play," and anytime you intervened and called penalties, you were the bad guy. That changed with the Shanahan Summit in 2005-06. When they came through the National Hockey League with their crackdown on obstruction and interference and hooking and holding, there was actually an appetite from everybody to see that happen. And I found it actually very challenging myself as a referee. It was kind of the end of game management. And I thought it went a little too far in those particular years right after, but I think they've settled on a good place now. And I think that's the biggest shift, is that people, you see, fighting's up this year. I don't know if it's familiarity breeds contempt, but I think as a general sense, the social justice approach to hockey is, let's make it fair for the skilled person. Let's not really accentuate the roughness. That is a paradigm shift. And as David Adams Richards, who's a senator now, but a great writer from Miramichi, New Brunswick, he wrote a book called Hockey Dreams, and he talked a lot about, the ethics or the ethos of hockey. And I asked him one day, after the change, and I said, "Do you like it?" He says, "Ron, I've come to the conclusion, no matter what they do to the game, we get used to it and we will still love the game." And I think that's really true.
And I guess last question here, because I could keep you for a long time, but I know you're a busy man, so I won't. We're going to ask you to impart some wisdom one more time, because when we talk about hockey for life, we're not just talking about playing the game for as long as you possibly can, which of course is one big aspect of it, but we're talking about finding that lifelong connection with the game in any way. For you, it is, obviously, you said you still play beer league hockey, but for you, a lot of it is through broadcasting. I can relate to that. Hockey's been a huge part of my life through the media side for the last 10 years of my life, and has really helped shape who I am now. So in saying all that and in being a part of the game in so many ways, what's probably maybe the one or two of the biggest life lessons you've taken from the game?
Well, if I was going to answer that question, I would do it this way. For all these years, like I'll be 61 on April the 12th, I often wonder, is it worth it? Did you pick the right vocation? Was it kind of frivolous? Was it significant? Was it meaningful to be involved in hockey your whole life? And then the Humboldt crash happened. And I saw Kevin Geringer, the president of the team, who was a lifelong educator, have to deal with the media. And I heard the stories about Darcy Hogan, the coach. Paul Dick is coach of the Steinbach Pistons in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, and he had phone messages that he had saved from Darcy Hogan. They were little aphorisms or maxims, ideas that he would pass on to Paul to give him encouragement. And I went to the Royal University Hospital 36 hours after the crash, met all the families. I remember Braden Camrood getting out of his bed and saying, "Ron, I'm going to come back next year and I'm going to honor our captain, Logan Schatz." And then I met all these families and got to know the players. And I thought to myself, wow, this is one hockey team, a junior outfit in rural Saskatchewan. And it is everything you would want yourself to be and anybody in your family to be. It is the greatest example of teamwork and leadership and passion It was just unbelievably beautiful to learn about Humboldt. It's a horrible thing to have experienced, to have this epiphany, but they are, for me, the greatest. And Darcy Hogan had the line, Ted, that I think you just keep this with you anytime you're feeling stressed. He always said, take care of the seconds and the minutes take care of themselves. So that was obviously for his players to go out and focus on the task at hand on a shift. But I think that is the thing, that you learn in hockey, is to take care of the seconds and the minutes to look after themselves. Yeah, it's a great life skill. And you think of the Broncos, even Gretzky, when Walter died recently, that was another guy for whom was it worth it? The answer is a resounding yes. Anytime I think about a life in hockey, I think about Gretzky and I think about Humboldt, and I think, oh, for sure it's worth it.
And I think that's a powerful note to end on, because it's a tragic incident with the Humboldt Broncos, but really shows the power of hockey and the hockey community and what the game can do. So we appreciate that. And as I said, a really great note to end on. And we won't keep you as much as I would love to, but we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, share some stories, share your wisdom as well, and touch on the officiating side of the game as well. So you have so much experience in the game that I think a lot of people can learn from and aspire to reach the levels that you've reached in whatever they do. So thank you for doing this, and of course thank you for everything you do for hockey across our country.
It's totally the same, Ted. Thank you, and we'll do it again. That's the easy part. Anytime.
A huge thank you to Ron MacLean for taking the time out of his hectic schedule to chat with us. Obviously, being a media guy myself, someone I've always looked up to and really will continue to look up to. What gets me about Ron and that interview is, with all he's done in his life, the places he's seen, the people he's met, the things that he's accomplished, he still speaks so fondly of his time here in Red Deer, growing up playing hockey in the neighborhood rinks. And if that doesn't personify hockey for life, I don't really know what does. So few people carry that same passion for the game and really life as Ron MacLean. So pretty humbling experience to get to see that up close, and hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. And we have another great chat coming up with Bob Ridley, but you know what's coming first. It's time to catch up on what's going on around the province, so here's what you need to know. Let's start off with a couple pieces of good news. 2 Team Alberta alumni are among the 47 athletes invited to the National Women's Team Selection Camp in Halifax, with a shot to suit up for Team Canada at the IIHF Women's World Championship in May. So congratulations are in order for Emrance Moshmeyer and Megan Mickelson, who are of course no strangers to donning the maple leaf, so best of luck to the two of them at camp. And more congratulations are in order for Team Alberta alumni Olin Zellweger, Corson Ceulemans, and Dylan Gunther, who were recently named to the National Men's Under-18 team for the 2021 IIHF U18 World Championship in Texas. AJ Murley of Beaumont will also be part of the team as the equipment manager. And a pretty cool one here is Hockey Alberta's own Matt Wenninger, the South Regional Center manager, got the call as the team's goaltending consultant, so exciting stuff there. Congratulations to everyone and best of luck in Texas. Now, in the category of far less exciting news, but important news nonetheless, the 2021 Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame induction gala has been postponed to 2022. You heard us talk a bit about the class of 2020 in the interview with Ron MacLean. Bill Busick, Cassie Campbell-Pascal, Bob Clark, John Davidson, Dr. Randy Gregg, Ken Hitchcock, Jamie McCown, and the 1974-75 Lethbridge native sons, who are all slated to be inducted this July after already being postponed in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, will now be inducted in 2022. The decision was made to postpone it yet again this year, not only to ensure the inductees can enjoy the night with their family and friends, but obviously can do so in a safe manner. So a little bit longer wait, well, a long wait, another year for all those inductees, but probably worth the wait. A great induction class there, and really looking forward to that ceremony. And this one's a little time sensitive, but still worth getting the word out when we can. Hockey Alberta's 2021 Future Coaches program is set for the weekend of April 24th and 25th, and of course has shifted to an online event this year, as most of Hockey Alberta's events have. U18 level male and female hockey players who are interested in making the jump to coaching have the opportunity to sign up for the Future Coaches program to learn more about coaching, skill instruction, and leadership. So if you or someone you know is interested and you're hearing this before April 24th, head to hockeyalberta.ca for more information. And the Future Coaches program is fueled by Gatorade, so a special shout out to them for helping make this happen. That's what you need to know. As always, head to hockeyalberta.ca for more information. And now we're going to throw to my chat with longtime Medicine Hat Tigers broadcaster Bob Ridley, but I want to preface it with a little bit of a story, because when I was in broadcasting school at SAIT in Calgary, just about 10 years ago now, I did my internship at Chat TV down in Medicine Hat near the end of my schooling, had the opportunity to work with and learn a lot from Bob, who back then had already cemented himself as a hockey legend. So fast forward to now, goes without saying that he's only continued to add to that legacy. So it was pretty cool for me to get to interview him all these years later. So without further ado, here it is. And when you're talking about broadcasting legends and longevity in the game, there's few out there who embody that more than our next guest. He's the first and only play-by-play voice in the 50-year history of the Medicine Hat Tigers. And in that time, he's missed just one game way back in the early 70s and called his 4,000th game this February, which is absolutely incredible. And on top of all that, he also drove the Medicine Hat Tigers bus for over 40 years. He's a two-time honored member of the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame, both with the class of 2019 as an individual and with the 1986-87 and 87-88 Tigers teams. And now the Western Hockey League has named a Media Excellence Award after him. Obviously, he was the first ever recipient of that. It's Bob Ridley. And Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, guys.
And, got to kind of catch my breath from your intro there. Obviously, you've done a lot in the game, and, over 50 years as the Tigers broadcaster is incredible. And normally we ask our guests just to outline the ways they're involved in hockey. With you, it's pretty obvious, 50 years with the Tigers on the broadcasting side. So starting from the start, how did you get involved with the Tigers, and how has your role evolved since then?
Well, I happened to be very fortunate. I was in Medicine Hat at the time broadcasting the old Senior Blades hockey, and they're in the Western Senior Hockey League. And then that league kind of folded, and of course, our arena burnt down, the old Memorial Arena burnt down, and there was a year without hockey. And therefore, the new arena was built, and they were looking for a new league to play in. And the Bill Hunter and, of course, Scotty Monroe, they looked at Medicine Hat, brand new rink. Hey, what a great addition to the Western Canada Junior Hockey League was called at that time. And of course, the owners of the Joyline Blades decided to go into major junior hockey, and they got the franchise, and the rest is history. That started in 1970, and we've been strong ever since.
And before that, growing up as well, what was your connection to the game? Did you play? Were you involved in it in any other way as well?
Yes, I played hockey. I'm from the Drumheller area, and I played hockey right up till juvenile, and then decided, hey, I'm not going to make a living playing this game because I'm not that good. So I thought, well, maybe there's a chance that I couldn't get involved as a play-by-play guy. I went to Montreal College in Calgary at that time. They had a real nice radio and television program, and got involved with that. And then I moved elsewhere and was a rock and roll disc jockey. And then at that particular time, the sports director of that radio station in Swift Current decided he was going to move on. So I over and started broadcasting intermediate hockey. So one thing led to another, wound up in Medicine Hat in 1968, and I'm still here.
And do you have any fond memories growing up playing hockey in Alberta?
Just the fact that back then, the things weren't nearly as complicated as they are now. And it was pretty intense hockey, even at the minor hockey level. But I think one thing that I really remember was the passion that now, and the passion that the players do, especially in the senior hockey ranks. That was like professional hockey back then. There were some tremendous players that played senior hockey that, had gotten too old to play in the NHL and so on. And I really remember the caliber of hockey. It was fantastic, both at the minor hockey level and also senior hockey. So those are real fond memories.
And getting to work for an Alberta team, too, for 50 years, growing up in Alberta, you've obviously been a huge part of the hockey community in this province for a long time. And as I mentioned, you actually managed to get inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame twice in the same night back in 2019. And I can't speculate, but I imagine not too many people have done that. How important are those Alberta hockey roots to you? And what did it mean to be able to be recognized for it and celebrate your achievements in the province?
It was fantastic. I was just overwhelming, to be honest with you. Very mixed emotions. Because it brought back old memories of those great years in '87 and '88 when the Tigers went back-to-back Memorial Cups. And what was special about that particular night was the fact that a lot of players I hadn't seen. They've moved on. They live elsewhere in the States and also Eastern Canada. The players I hadn't seen since way back in '87 and '88 were there. And we had a real good chit-chat about those glory years, you might say, and also what they're doing now. So, yeah, it was a real special time for sure.
And like I talked about, chatting with Ron MacLean as well, the life of a broadcaster is a pretty hectic one, can be incredibly busy at times, can be hard on your body, on your mind, and, on your loved ones as well, and on your social life. So with junior hockey, I think it can be even more exhausting. You're not flying, you're on the bus a lot, and, add to it for yourself too, you're driving the bus. You're not just riding the bus, you're driving it. So what has kept you going for these last 50 years and really fuels your passion for hockey?
Well, I get asked that a whole lot. I'm not sure. I love the game, and it's something that you do. And you get into a routine, whether it's driving the bus and doing the play-by-play or doing both of them. It's what you do, and it's what you enjoy. And probably the thing that I enjoyed the most is the friendships I've made over the years with not only the Medicine Hat Tigers, but also executives in the Western Hockey League and so on. It's they become very good friends, and I think it's not money. It's the people that you meet, the friendships that you meet, and that's the thing that's kept me going all these years.
And let's talk about your side gig a little bit. The last couple of years, you're not driving the bus anymore. And I know for me, when I hear that, like when I was on the bus, that was kind of my time to unwind, get ready for the game prep, So for you, you're driving the bus, you get to where you're going, and then you have to call a game for 3 hours. So how did you get into that gig in the first place? And I guess what kept you behind the wheel for 40 plus years?
Well, that's a real good question. I often ask myself that, especially when you go through blizzards and bad roads and everything else. I kept asking myself, what am I doing this for? But like I said before, it's something that you just do, and you get into a routine. Probably the thing that the players remember most is me driving the bus. They never heard me broadcast a game because they're playing the game. But those great friendships, we'd have players coming up to the front of the bus, chit-chatting with me and talking about life and talking about hockey and so on. And that's the thing that really kind of kept me going and made me feel real good about what I was doing. So that continued. It became to a point that it just interfered with me getting the job done on the air because what happens was we were driving too many hours, and consequently rules came into play whereby you could only drive so many hours and so on. So I had to back away from that, and that was a good thing. But those players that used to come up and chit-chat with me at the front of the bus will be in my hearts forever.
And let's talk about those relationships as well. And I know, you have such a great view for all these great players coming up and great Albertans as well, thinking all the way back to Lanny McDonald. And how awesome is that for you to be able to be part of those hockey journeys? Because as a junior hockey broadcaster, you see these kids for maybe a max of 5 years, but then you get to watch so many of them go on, and maybe they make the NHL, or maybe they go to school, they have a great career. But I do know you stay in contact with a lot of those players. So how amazing is that for you to get to be a part of all those journeys?
Absolutely. And that was part and parcel of what has made this such a special career, is all friends. Landon McDonald, a Hockey Hall of Famer, another former Tiger, became a Hockey Hall of Famer recently. Kenny Holland, the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. And then all of these guys are really special. And there's about 900 of them that have graduated from the Medicine Hat Tigers. But one individual that has become and is and was, even way back in the day, is Kelly Rudy, former Tiger goaltender. Kelly's part of Hockey Night in Canada, of course, has been for a long time, but also he's involved with the mental health program here in Alberta and so on. And he's a real proponent of that, a big supporter of that. And it's those kind of people that, like I said, it's not about money. It's about those kind of friendships and those kind of people that you totally admire, and glad that they've left hockey, gone on, and just become great citizens here in Alberta.
And so 4,000 games under your belt now, all for the same team. You've only missed one in over 50 years. That's, mind-blowing to me. And that shows the dedication it takes to really be a successful broadcaster. And it was maybe a milestone you weren't even sure you'd reach, because rewind now just over a year ago back to last season, mid-March, you're getting ready to do a game number 3,999, I think. And I think we all know what happened then, right? The league, everything shut down. So thankfully the WHL was able to get some games in this year. You were able to hit that landmark, and which again, congratulations, because that's, I remember being in Medicine Hat, and I think there's a, Bob Ridley burger and 3,000 games is up in the rafters there. And now they can change that to 4,000. So what was going through your mind though, the whole time in between? Because that's a pretty long year, knowing that, okay, I'm sitting at 3,998 games, and what's going to happen. So that's got to be pretty hard, not knowing if and when the league might start up again.
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating, but you just wanted the league to start up when it was the right time to do so, when all the protocols could be in place, that this COVID thing wouldn't hit any of the players or any of the executives or the coaches or whatever. And the Western Hockey League, along with the Alberta government, did a tremendous job in making this all happen. So I was happy that it was going to be a safe thing to do and get those 2 extra games in that would hit the milestone of 4,000. But I'll tell you, like over the hour, to wonder if this was ever going to happen or not, because this COVID thing just was not going away. But all in all, we're able to get it done, and that's in the past now, and we'll move on and try to set another milestone if we can.
And the game, junior hockey, NHL, the game at every level is changing in a lot of ways. And for 50 years, you had the best seat in the house watching the game. And this might be a hard one to really narrow down to just one thing, but how have you seen the game change and evolve in the last 50 years?
It seems to change about every 5 years, a little bit subtly. But back in 1970, when we were going strong, when the Tigers were, stepping into the Western Canada Junior Hockey League, it was called at that time, it was tough hockey. Like all the teams wanted to be like the old Philadelphia Flyers and so on. And there was lots of fights, lots of brawls and everything else. But it's become a more finesse game right now, more skilled, and players are a lot quicker. The league is a lot quicker. The game itself is so much quicker. I think it's for the better. I had a lot of people say, I wish there was a few more fights and so on, just to get the adrenaline going. But I think the game is so much better now, and it's so fast. And there's so many of these great young players coming up through the ranks, and watching the Connor McDavids and the Draisaitls and so on, watching them perform game after game. It is a better game, no question about it. And I got to admit, I'm still enjoying it.
And here's another really hard one for you to pin down. Is you've called 5 WHL championships and back-to-back Memorial Cup wins for the Tigers. Do you really have a favorite memory from all your time with the Tigers and the time you've spent around the game, whether it's one specific moment or just something about your career or about your job that really stands out for you?
One thing that the first time the Tigers went to the Memorial Cup was back in 1973. That was at the old Montreal Forum. And my hero at that time was Sullivan. I think you probably heard that name, even though you're a young guy. And Danny was the broadcaster for national television, also for the Montreal Canadiens. So I got the chance to broadcast the Memorial Cup games out of his broadcast booth at the Old Montreal Forum. That was my first thrill when it came to broadcasting hockey, no question about it. So Danny Gallivan back in those days was my hero, and he still is. And I had the opportunity to sit in his broadcast booth and broadcast some hockey. So that was a very special moment for me.
And of course, one thing we really believe in at Hockey Alberta is, of course, hockey for life and what it really means. And you obviously embody that in so many ways. And for you, you've been involved in hockey in a more non-traditional way with the media side. And it's an incredible way to stay involved in the game, and maybe something that people, when they're coming out of hockey, or just like myself, I wasn't a very good hockey player, but wanted to stay involved with the game, So do you have any advice out there for people who are maybe thinking about going in, not just broadcasting, but the media side and being involved with hockey on the other side? Obviously, unfortunately, as we keep seeing, those jobs are kind of dwindling a little bit, but there's still lots of opportunity out there and different ways with the way media changes. So do you have advice for any of those people who, not even just in broadcasting, but again, to just find a way to stay involved with the game in a non-playing fashion?
Yeah, if you've got a passion for the game and you really enjoy it, there's lots of ways you can stay involved, whether you want to become a broadcaster or whatever. But if you want to become a broadcaster, what I've told a lot of young guys coming up through the ranks, be yourself. Don't try to emulate and copy somebody else. Be yourself. And that particular advice was given to me by Danny Gallivan once. He said, establish your own style and then work on that and perfect it. So that's what I tried to do over the years, and it kept me going. But for those that just want to get involved by maybe doing a little bit of coaching, getting involved in coaching, because I'll tell you, those kids need your help. And just being a volunteer, running people here and there and all over the place, going to the rink and saying, hey, I'd like to help out in this end of things, even becoming an official. They need referees all the time. And there's all kinds of ways to become involved. But if you want to be a broadcaster, you got to be patient and can't expect a whole lot of money right off the get-go. So, you've got to spend a lot of time, and time is very precious for sure.
And that's great advice. Obviously, I kind of went the broadcasting route a little bit, and I'm still doing those type of things, but obviously now in a little bit different role with Hockey Alberta. But I think it's a great way to go. It's a ton of fun, and you get to see the game from the other side as well, which is really, really cool. And last question for you, Bob, and again, probably another tough one. Is there one, or maybe like the biggest life lesson that you've taken from the game? Because as I said, you've seen a lot, and you've had the best seat in the house for it.
Life lessons, that is a good question, because there's lots of them. But I think probably the main thing is learning how to get along with people, because there's all different types of people that are involved in the game of hockey. And you've got to learn how to get along with all of them. And some have different ideas than what you may have. And that's their prerogative and so on. So you have to kind of deal with that and just keep that passion going. Like the game is a lot bigger than any of us will ever be. And just remember that, keep that in mind, because if you start thinking you're bigger and better than the game itself, then you're in real trouble. So just have that passion and just really enjoy what the game's all about. It's about people, and that's what I've always tried to keep in mind.
And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I said that was the last question, but I'm thinking I might get, I'll be remiss if I don't ask you this, because in 50 years you're obviously going to have some good hockey stories, and everyone likes a good hockey story. Do you have one that stands out? Just a funny story, obviously, that you can tell without putting anyone else, pun intended, throwing them under the bus or anything. Is there anything in your 50 years, maybe your favorite story you have of whether it's a player, a road trip, anything like that?
Well, there's lots of them, and you did put me on the spot, because I don't really have a favorite one, but there are lots of them. One that kind of comes to mind, Al Conroy, of course, was a big-time Tiger player back in the early 80s, and we were coming out of Regina one night, and this was after the game, of course, about 2:00 in the morning. I got pulled over by the RCMP between Moose Jaw and Regina, and I figured, I guess I must have been speeding. Well, I threw open the bus door, and there was a couple of RCMP standing right there, and they just motioned to me, please get out of the bus. So I got out of the bus, didn't know what was happening. And I figured I was kind of shaking in my. The officers got on the bus and hollered towards the back, Al Conroy, I have to see you. And so poor Russ Farwell, he was our general manager, had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. And so Al Conroy comes to the front of the bus and he was shaking in his boots. He had no idea what he did wrong, and went down the steps of the bus and stepped out. And here he was faced with his cousin. His cousin wanted to say hi to Al Conroy, and he was an RCMP officer, and they had a little chit chat. We went on our merry way. But that was one incident that caught me totally by surprise. And I always think back on that, and I saw how white Al Conroy's face was at the time when he saw those two RCMP officers.
And and I think we all know that's about as wild as life on the road gets, right? So that's, yeah. So no, thanks. Again, I put you on the spot and appreciate that. But I think we know, people, broadcasters, everyone, there's so many great hockey stories. And I know you probably have a million of them. And we won't keep you any longer because, again, you're just another person I could talk to for hours and hours, and really appreciate this one. Obviously, when I was getting started in broadcasting, had the opportunity to intern in Medicine Hat and work under you a little bit and with the Medicine Hat Tigers. So this was really cool for me. I really appreciate it. Sorry I didn't make a little bit more of myself, but you know what? That's we won't pin that on you. But thanks so much for joining us and sharing these stories. And of course, best of luck the rest of the season.
Well, thank you so much. It was great talking with you. And hey, I'm just a huge supporter of the hockey here in Alberta and the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame, Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, and so on. So you guys just keep up the good work. And when this pandemic goes away, maybe we can start inducting some more people into those marvelous organizations. Okay.
And once again, a huge thank you to Bob Ridley for taking the time to chat with us. Another really cool one for me, and just a fantastic person who once again personifies hockey for life. Between chatting with him and Ron MacLean, really just shines a light on yet another way to stay involved with the game in a different capacity. And speaking from experience, although it can be a tough road, it's a lot of work, it is absolutely worth it. It is such a cool perspective to see the game, or really any sport or anything in general. So I really encourage anyone out there who's even the slightest bit interested in media to really consider it, because it is a great path. And on that note, as we wrap up episode 10 of the Center Ice podcast, a special shout out to a future broadcaster, SAIT student Tyler Coffey, who's currently interning with us here at Hockey Alberta. He took the reins on editing this episode, so it's pretty fitting for a radio student to be able to edit the voices of two of the absolute best in the business. Sorry to Tyler that he's got to edit my voice as well, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So thank you, Tyler, for your hard work on this episode. And of course, as always, thank you to producer Steve. Couldn't do this without you, so thanks for all your hard work. And we can't do it without you, the listener, so thanks again for tuning into the Center Ice podcast. I'm Ted Emmett, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Center Ice podcast. For this episode and more, head to hockeyalberta.ca. If there's a topic you'd like covered on an upcoming episode, email info@hockeyalberta.ca.